How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we stand Daf Kuf Daled, Daf 104 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends. Today's an interesting daf. I mean, it's like a chelek daf. Actually, for a bit on Kuf Daled and Beis, we actually learn psukim from Megillas Eicha, which is interesting. All right, let's do it. I'm actually in a shtickle rush. I want to see if I could do this daf in if I could do it in 20 minutes, that would be great. So we'll see what we can do. So we're on daf Kuf Gimel with Beis. 3 lines from the bottom. Giving people food to eat when they're traveling on the way. So it's a great thing. It's a gute Zach. Because lack of doing so was so significant that it distanced 2 families from Israel. Ammon and Moab, even though they come from they should be our cousins, right? They come from Lot, the nephew of Avraham Avinu, and yet because they did not provide us with bread and water when we were traveling through the area and we needed sustenance, and they failed in that mission, so they are distanced, right? Gam dor shlishi lo yavoy b'kal Hashem, right? Was that what that was? Where are we? So all right. Let's go weiter. Rabbi Yechanan Didei Almighty says Rabbi Yechanan himself. 5 things. Merachekes es akrovim. If you don't give people food to eat when they're traveling, so it distances the people who are close. Mekareves es arachokim brings, and by doing so, by providing food for travelers, you bring them far away people close. Umealemes enai min harishayim. And if Rishayim do it, so then God closes his eyes from them, gives them a free pass. And if prophets of the Baal provide food for people on the way, so then Shechina is shore on them. And a mistake regarding this matter is treated like an intentional bad thing. It distances the people who are close, Ammon and Moab, as we saw from Ammon and Moab, and it brings close those who are far. From Yisroi, Rabbi Yechanan says Rabbi Yechanan, when Moses goes to Midian, and the daughters of Jethro are there by the watering hole. And anyway, so Yisro says to his daughters, go call him and make sure he has food to eat. Let him come eat with us. So because he did that, Zochu b'nei bonav yoshvu b'lishkas agozis. His Einekluch were mamish in the Sanhedrin, in the Lishkas Hagozis. Shneimar, as the Apostle says, Mishpachas Sofrim. And I think the point is Mishpachas Sofrim is Kilu, the judges in the Lishkas Hagozis. Yoshve Yavitz, Tirosim, Shemosim, Suchosim Hakenim. That's the key word, the Kanim. Haboy Machmas, Ovi Beis Rechov, Uchsiv Osum Vnei Kani, Choisin Moshe Olum Hir Atmarim Es Bnei Yehuda, Midbar Yehuda Asher B'negev Arad Vayelech Vayeshev Esoam. So basically the point is that it says in the first pasuk, Mishpachas Sofrim, and it also says Kanim. And as we see from the second pasuk, Kanim is Chosin Moshe. So basically, the point is that the Eineklich of Yisro, his descendants, were in the Lishkas Hagozis, in the Sanhedrin. Umalemes enai min harishayim, and God turns a blind eye towards evil people if they provide people with food. Mimicha, from Micha, as we learned about yesterday, that he provided people with food when they were traveling, and therefore that we said that's why he's not included. That's why he's excluded from the list of people without a chelek b'olam haba. Umash Shechina al nevi'ei habal, and Shechina is shoyre on the nevi'ei habal if they give people food. Mechaver shel idoi, right? When Ido, we learned about this at the end of Eluhein ha nechnokin, that that Ido went to Beis El to tell them to prophesy a prophecy about their avodah zarah, and then and the instructions were don't accept any food or water or anything like that. And then this faker, this Novia Baal faker, convinced Ido to eat to come and eat with him, and because he provided Ido with food and water and stuff, so the Chsiv, as Paul says, Vayihem Yoshvim el Hashulchan, that they were eating by the table, they were sitting by the table and eating. Vayidvar Hashem el Hanovi Shivoi, and then the word of God came to that false prophet, that prophet of Baal, because he provided food and water for Idov. And mistakes with regard to this mitzvah of giving people food to eat when they're traveling are treated like intentional sins. The Omar of Yura Marab Ilmale Hilveu Yehoinisin Lidavid Shtei Kikros Lechem. If only Yehoinisin would have given to David 2 loaves of bread. Lonerga Nov Irakayanim. The city of Nov Irakayanim would not have been destroyed, and the people there would not have been killed. Vonitra Doiga Adomi, and Doiga Adomi would not have been implicated. Vlonerg Shaul v'Shloshes Banov, and Shaul and his 3 children would not have been killed on account of that sin, and that was all because David needed food, so he went to Novi Rakayanim. But if Yehoinisin would have just given David a shtickle broit, a little bit of food, so then this whole thing could have been avoided. And it ended up causing, ultimately, Yehoinisin his life, because he ended up dying because of it. How come Achaz, the father of Chizkiyahu, was not? How come he was excluded from the list of people with barred entry from Olam Haba? Right, the list was Yoravam, Achav, and Menashe. What about Achaz? So Amar Yirmiyah bar Abba mipnei shemutal ben shnei tzadikim. Well, because he's in a tzaddik sandwich. That, well, maybe. Anyways, his father was Yosem, right? Ben Yosem l'Chizkiyahu. His father was Yosem, and his son was Chizkiyahu. So because his father and his son were good, so therefore he was excluded from that list. Rav Yosef says Rav Yosef mipnei shehayu lo boishes panim Mishayahu is because Achaz showed a shameful face before Yishayahu. Shneimar, as Paul says, Vayomer Hashem el Yishayahu. The Eibishter says to Yishayahu, say no likras Achaz, go to Achaz. Ata ushar Yoshuv b'necho el k'tzei tailas abrecho el yoina el mesilas stay koives. My koives, what's this koives? Ika da'ami de kovshinu laipe v'cholaf. So one opinion of koves is that Achaz kind of hid his face, he covered his face when passing by Yeshayahu. That he put some kind of, watering vessel of washers. He covered his face with it or something. I covered his head with it and passed by. How come Ammon was excluded from that terrible list? Because out of the honor of his son Yoshio. Menashe nami lo nimne mipnei kvodo shel Chizkiyahu. Well, why don't we exclude Menashe then? How come he's included in the list? He should be excluded out of the honor of his father Chizkiyahu. So bra mizake abba lo mizake bra. A son can help out his father, can acquit his father. A father does not acquit his son. So meaning in the merit of Yoshio, so Ammon was spared. However, in the merit of Chizkiyahu, Menashe was not spared. His son, right? Chizkiyahu's son Menashe was not spared. Okay. Now, probably Uchsev. Oh, Kiddetanis. We're learning in a brisa. Where am I? The ein miyodi matzil, that when the pasuk says that nobody can be saved from my hand, ein Avram matzil as Yishmael, that the merit of Avram is not going to save Ishmael. in Yitzchak Matzalas Esav, the merit of Isaac is not going to save his son Esau. Okay, but now once we have arrived here, well, let's say then that the reason why Achaz was excluded was not because his father was Yosem and his son was Chizkiyahu. It's simply enough that his son was Chizkiyahu, because we said that Ben Mezakei Oviv. How come Yoakim was excluded from that list? Because of the story of Rav Chia bar Avua that we already saw on Daf Pei Beis. The Amar Reb Chia bar Avuya Ksiv al Gulgalto Shel Yoakim. It says on the skull of Yoakim Zois ve'od acheres this, and also another negative thing. Zekena de Reb Preda, the Zayde of Reb Preda, Ashkach Gulgalta, he found a skull, Tehava Koshadi B'Shar Yerushalayim, that it was strewn in the gates of Jerusalem, and it said on the skull, Zos, this, Va'od Acheres, and another. Kavav Leikbra, the Zayde of Reb Preda tried to bury the skull, but it would not be buried. It kept on popping up. Kavav Leikbra, Nachamali tried, no avail. Amar Gugata Yoyakimi, this must be the skull of Yoyakim, Dichsivbe, that it says, Kfur as Chomer you cover. It will be the burial of a donkey, Sachov, I think Sachov. Sachov, that's my guess. Sachov. Okay, what do I get? A pat on the back? Alright, 1 second. How do I even pat myself on the back without hitting the... Oh gosh, I don't even know if I can pat myself on the back. Patting myself on the back, it's actually not as easy as it sounds. Not as easy as it sounds. You gotta like do yoga or something in order to be able to pat yourself on the back. But I feel like the Chevra at Pablo and Talmud does yoga, right? Just not me. Patting myself on the back. Oh, I can pat myself on the back like this, actually. That's probably the easiest way to like go around back. Not from the top, but from go around like... Okay, I guess I need to pat myself on the back more often. Who here can pat themselves on the back from the top? That's more complicated. Can you do it from the same side? Instead of going to the other side, can you pat yourself on the back the same side? And I'm not talking about just like touching the top of the back leg. That's more like your neck. I'm talking about, further down on the back. All right. Okay. So Omer Malko, but Zekena Shor Preda, he says, look, at the end of the day, Yoyakim was a king. I shouldn't disgrace him. So therefore, Karcha b'shiroi ve'oisva b'sifta. So he wrapped the skull in like garments and he put it in a box. Chaziso divisu, and now his wife saw that there was this skull in the house in a box that was wrapped up in a box. So she figured, this skull must be the skull of my husband's first wife, Manchila, that he hasn't forgotten about her. Shagra Tanura, but she wasn't so excited about this, so she lit up her stove, Vikalsa, and she burnt the skull of Yehoyakim. Now we can understand what it means. This, the fact that it was strewn in the gates of Jerusalem, and also another thing, that it was burnt, and then I guess that was sort of the punishment of Yehoyakim. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, B'shvil atoiv be'einecha asisi, that when Chizkiyahu, I believe, says that I did all the good stuff in your eyes, which wasn't, I guess that's, better to be more, humble, rather than like toot your own horn in that sense. So because he said atov be'einecha asisi, ma'os, because he already did that kind of negative thing, he then, he then asked God for a sign when God told him that he would be healed. Right. Well, I want a sign that I will be healed, which also wasn't such a great thing to ask. So like, Aver Gorer Saver, once he said Atov Benecha Sisi, well then it led to Ma'os. B'shvil Ma'os, then when Chizkiyahu asked for a sign, Nachum Achlu al Shulchanu, because of that, what ended up happening was that Nochrim ended up eating by his table, as we learned about on Daf, I think it was Daf Tzadi Vav, that whatever that guy's name was, he what was that guy's name? His name was the guy whose name it was. That was his name, Bladen, that guy. Anyways, so he ended up sending like officers to Chizkiyahu, and then because these Babylonian officers ate at the table of Chizkiyahu, Garim Galus Levonov, that's what caused exile to his descendants. Messiah lay the Chizkiah, and this supports Chizkiah. The Amar Chizkiah kol hamizamin avodas ovid kochavim l'soich beis. So anybody who invites in ovid kochavim to his house, mishamish olav, and serves him, Garim Galus Levonov, that causes exile to his children. Shneimah, as the Apostle says, mibanecha asher yetzu micha asher tolid yikachu. Yeah, okay, fine. There you go. V'hayu sarisim beichal melech Bavel. All right, sarisim beichal melech Bavel. Okay, that from your and from your children that come from you, asher tolid, that will be born yikchu, they will take v'hayu sarisim beichal melech Bavel, that they will be like servants in the Heichal Melech Bavel, and that's what happened. Vayismach aleim Chizkiah bayarim es beis nechoso es hakesef es hazav es habsom es hashemen hatov v'gomer, that Chizkiah showed these officers from Bavel all of his stuff. Rav, my beis nechoso, says Rav, what is his beis nechoso? Ishto hishkisa aleim. So Rav says that it means that his wife was like, being the Sarah Hamashkim, that she was providing all the drinks. Where am I? Ushmuel Amar Beis Ginozav Erloim. Shmuel says that Chizkiah showed him his treasury. Reb Yochanan Amar Zayin Oichel Zayin Heraloyin. Yochanan says that he showed them weapons that are able to destroy other weapons. Eishva Yoshva Bodod. So now we get into we're going to go through a bunch of psukim in Megillas Eicha that we read on Tisha B'Av, and we're going to make drushes from them. Eicha Yoshva Bodod Amar Rav Amar B'Yechanan B'Pnei Ma Loku Yisrael Be'Eicha. How come the Yidden were stricken with Eicha, which is Gematria 36, B'Pnei She'avar Al Shleishim V'Sheish Kreis Shabbator, because they were in violation of the 36 choruses in the Torah. Amar B'Yechanan B'Pnei Ma Loku Ba'alav Beis. Right, many of the prakim in Eicha, or maybe 4 out of 5 of them, are written in the Aleph Beis. Right, the first pasuk is Aleph, the second pasuk starts with a Beis, etc. Because the Yidden violated the Torah, Shenitna ba'Aleph Beis, which was given with the Aleph Beis letters. Yoshva Badad sat alone, isolated. Amrava Rabbi Yechanan Amra Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbi, the Eibishter initially said, Ani Amarti v'yishkoin. Let me check this out. Vayishkoin, you saw betach bodod ein Yaakov el eretz dagam v'sirosh af shomov yarfu tol. So initially, the Eibishter says, Vayishkoin, you saw betach bodod ein Yaakov, that they will be secure, they will be not isolated, but like unique. On their own pedestal, on their own, like they were like the top. But now they'll be isolated. The city that was filled with, had a huge nation. Apparently, if you they would like have minor, right, young boys marry adult women, like older women and more developed women, and then younger women marry more developed men. And apparently, because if they're like both too young, then it might take longer for them to have children. But apparently, that combo of like younger boy, older woman, older boy, younger woman is better for like maximizing children having. Okay. Haisa ka'almana was like a almana. Listen to this. Amravira Amarav ke'almana v'lo almana mamish. Well, like a widow, but not really like a widow. Ella ki sheshalach ba'alim dinasayam v'daito lachzor eleh. No, it doesn't mean that literally Yerushalayim was like a widow whose husband is gone forever. No. Temporary. More like a woman whose husband has gone on a long trip, but ultimately is going to come back. The Yidden, yes, we were away from Eretz Yisrael from, for a long time, but as the Gemara tells us here, it's only eventually, right? It wasn't a real almana. The Yidden are going to come back to Eretz Yisrael, and Baruch Hashem, I'm reading this Gemara from Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. Rabasi, Bagoyim, Sarosi, Bamedinos, Amaravam, Rabbi Yechon, Kol Makom Shein Hochin, that wherever the Yidden go, and the Yidden were exiled from Eretz Yisrael, and we went to many places, wherever the Yidden go, nice and Sarim Ladonein, they become officers in the places where they are, they achieve great things. There's a Maisa with two people, Shenishbu Har HaKarmel, that they were taken captive in Har HaKarmel. Unfortunately, it's interesting, there have been so many examples recently, I think, in the Agaritas of chelek, of things from way back then that are still, for better or for worse, present to this very day. The Gemara talks about two people who were taken captive on Har HaKarmel in the north of Eretz Yisrael. We have 251 Yidden who were taken captive in the south of Eretz Yisrael. And their captor was walking behind them. And one of the captives said to the other, that the camel that is walking ahead of us is blind in one eye. Vituna shtei nodos, and it is carrying two pouches. Achas shel yain v'achas shel shemen. One of the pouches is filled with wine, while the other is filled with oil. Vishnei bnei adam amanhigin osa, and the two people, the two individuals who are leading the donkey. Echad Yisrael ve'echad Nachri. One of them is a Yid, the other one is not. Omar loin shaboy, and the captor says to them, Amkshe oref, you stiff-necked people. Me'ayin atem yoidin, how do you know this? Right? Most people, if they were to be taken captive, they would not be able to think clearly. And here they're thinking clearly and discussing these insights about the camel and the contents of their load and the drivers. So Amru lo. So the Yidden replied, you know how we know? The captives replied, you know how we know this? Gomel me asavim. Well, the camels are eating from the grasses in front of them, and they're eating from the side that they're able to see from, right? I mean, they keep on eating from one particular side, so therefore that's the side that they could see. The other side they can't see from. Vituna shtei know this, and they have two, containers, pouches of liquids. Achas shel yain v'achas shel shemen. One is wine, the other is oil. Shel yain mitaftif v'shokeh v'shel shemen mitaftif v'tzof. We know because whenever the liquids would get out of the pouch with the wine, it would fall to the ground and be absorbed into the ground. Where whenever it was oil, it would kind of just float on top of the ground. And the two the escorters of the camel, one is a Yid and one is not. Nachri nifne laderech, we saw nifne staden. The Yid, when he had to use the bathroom, he would go off to the side, but the Nachri, when he had to use the bathroom, he would just go right in the middle of the road. Okay. Radaf Achreim, the captor ran after the people that were in front of him to validate their insight, this insight. And it turned out that the Yidden were 100% right, 100% accurate in their insights. But V'noshkon al Roshan, so the captor came and he kissed them on their heads. Ve'avi on the vessel, and he took them to his house. V'also len suda, the mamish made the biggest suda you've ever seen, gedola, a big one, kesuda shloim b'shaitor. V'yimeraka the fame, he was dancing for them. V'omer baruch shebocher bezari shel Avram. Blessed is the one who chose the descendants of Abraham, and gave to them from his wisdom, and wherever they go, they become rulers, masters to the people in charge. And he freed them, and they went home to their homes peacefully. Okay, well, halavai, I give a bracha that the same thing should happen today, right now. That the Rishoyim, that these horrible captors will recognize that the Yidden are the best, and they'll say, you know what, you deserve to go free. The pasuk in Eicha says, "Bocha yisivke balayla." It says, you shall surely cry at night. How come the double cry? One for the first temple, the other one for the second temple. Balayla, at night, al iske laila, because of the matter of the night. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Vatisa kol ha'eda vayitnu es kelon vayivku ha'am balayla ahu. After the miraglim, the chait of the miraglim, it says that the whole congregation cried at, they raised their voices and they cried that night. Amar Rabba, Amar B'yechanan, Oisei halayla leil tisha bav haya. That night of the miraglim that they cried was the night of Tisha B'av. Amar loy nakadosh baruch hu Yisrael, the Eibishter said to the Yidden, Atem b'chisam b'chiyah shel chinam, you're crying for nothing. V'ani ekba lochem b'chiyah l'darius, I'm going to make this day a day of crying for all generations. Daracher, alternatively, balayla, what does it mean? B'choi sivke balayla, shkol aboicha balayla, kol nishma, that somebody who cries at night, his voice is heard. Daracher balayla, at night, shkol aboicha balayla, k'chov mazalus boichin imo, that anybody who cries at night, the stars and the constellations, they cry with him. That they cry at night, because anybody who cries at night, whoever hears the cry will then cry out as well. There was a maise with a woman who was the neighbor of Rabbi Gamliel, Shemei's Bina, that her son died, and she was crying. And she would cry about the loss of her son at night. She would cry at night. Rabbi Gamliel heard her cry, and he then cried as well. Until his eyelashes fell out because he was crying so much. The next day, his students saw, wow, what happened to Rabbi Gamliel? He was crying all night. So they removed this woman from this bereaved mother from Rabbi Gamliel's neighborhood, so that she wouldn't keep him up crying at night. And her tear is on her cheek, like a woman who cries for her young, for the husband of her youth. Mourn, lament, like a besula who is mourning on the husband of her youth. The enemies of the Yidden, the instigators of the Yidden, the oppressors of the Yidden were made the top. Amarava, Amar B'yechanan, Kol HaMeitzi L'Yisrael, anybody who oppresses the Yidden, Naisei Rosh, is made into a great person beforehand, so that it's like, that the Yidden are, we're not oppressed by nobodies, we're oppressed by strong people. Kilamuaf lasher mutzakla, Ko'es Arishon Heikal, Aitzes Vulum Vaitzen Aftali Va'achron Nichbi Derech Hayom, Ever Ayadin, Gilalagoyim, when it says Kilamuaf lasher mutzak, Amarava Mabiyachan, Kolamatzik L'Yisrael, Eno Oyif, anybody who oppresses the Yidden does not get tired. Loi Alechem Kol Oivrei Dorech, that this should not happen to you, right there, that Jerusalem cried out that what we're experiencing, what I'm experiencing, cried out to the passers-by. This should not. I don't this shouldn't happen to anybody else. Nobody else should have to experience this. We see that this, I guess, precedent is from the Torah, this precedent of like not wishing something terrible on other people. All the people passing by, that Jerusalem was made like those who do Averis, because this is what it says by Stom, Vashem himtir al Stom, that Hashem rained down on Stom, Gofris va'esh, I think. What was it? Gofris va'esh, Gofris va'melech, what was it? Gofris va'esh, Me'esh Hashem and Hashemaim, Ve'ilu b'Yushalayim Ksiv, and it says also by Yerushalayim, Mimarim shalach eish ba'atzmosai, by Yerden v'gomer. Uchsiv, and it says, Vayigdal oven bas ami mechata sdoi, and Taka says in Eicha that the sin of my nation was even greater than that of Sodom. Wait, if the sin of Yerushalayim was worse than Sodom, well then why was Sodom utterly destroyed while Jerusalem, I live in Jerusalem, still exists? Because Yerushalayim, in Yerushalayim, they were a step up. They had a certain mila to them that Sodom did not. Shlohoisu b'Sodom te'ilu b'Sodom ksiv hine ze hoyo ovin Sodom achosech gaon sivas lochem v'ad oni ve'evyon lo echzika v'gom v'ilu b'Yerushalayim ksiv yidei nosh machmanus b'shli yaldein. That when it came to Sodom, mamish, they wouldn't help anybody out. There was no such concept of doing anybody a favor. But in Yerushalayim, even under the worst of circumstances, where people were mamish cooking their own children and eating their own children, but they would share with others, as horrible as that circumstance was. Sila kol abirai Hashem bekirbi, that Hashem destroyed all of my strong ones. It's like a person who says that this coin is pasul, right? That Jerusalem was like destroyed and made pasul. Patsu alecha piem. Right? How come the letter Pei precedes the letter Ayin, right? Meaning all the other psukim are in alphabetical order, but then you get up to the letter Ayin, and it's actually Pei there, and Ayin comes after Pei. So because they said with their PM, with their mouths, the letter Pei, that which they didn't see with their Einem, with their Ayin, with their eyes. They said with their mouth what they didn't actually see with their eyes. Ochle ami ochlu lechem Hashem lo karo amarav amar b'yechon kol ha'ocha melachim she'Yisrael. Anybody who eats the bread of the Yidden, right, like those who destroyed Jerusalem, toim tam lechem, is mamish tasting the taste of bread. She'eno ocha melachim she'Yisrael. And if you don't eat from the bread of Yidden, eno toim tam lechem, he's not tasting the taste of bread. Lo karo Hashem lo karo. They didn't call out to God. Rav Amar Elu Dayanin. Rav says these are referring to the judges of Israel. Ushmuel Amar Elu Melamdei Tinokis, and Shmuel says that these are the teachers, the Melamids, that they weren't being proper. Mimanon, and who counted these people on the list? Right? We said there were 3 kings, 4 Hedjotis. Who made the list? How do you know who got into Olam Haba and who doesn't? So Rav Ashi, Anshe Knesset Hagadola, Minom, says Rav Ashi, it was the men of the great assembly, they assembled the list. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Bikshu Od Limnos Echod, they wanted to add another king to the list. Shloima. Bod Muzdukno Shal Aviv, but his father David HaMelech came, Vinishticha Lifneim, and prostrated himself before the Anshe Knesset Hagadola to convince them, right, to supplement, to lobby them that Shloima should be excluded. But they didn't listen to David HaMelech. And then a fire came from heaven and singed their benches that they were sitting on. Still, they were undeterred. They did not listen, and they were going to keep Shloima on the list, this disgraceful list. Yotza Basko ve'Amra loim chazisa ish moyer b'melachta. Have you seen somebody who was so quick in his work? Lifnei melachim yisatzav. He should be on a list of kings. Ba'yisatzav fnei chashuchim. He shouldn't be on a list of disgraced people. Mishiktim beisi leveso. Somebody who built my house, the Beis Hamikdash, before, right, the Baskol is saying from Hashem, he who built my house, the Beis Hamikdash, Lifnei Beso, before he built his own house. V'lo, not only that, Ela Shebesi Bana B'Sheva Shanim, Uveso Bana Shloshesrei Shana. He built my house, the Beis Hamikdash, in nearly half the amount of time it took to build his own house. 7 years versus 13 years. Lifnei Malachim Yisatzev, you should be on the list of kings. Ba'al Yisatzev Lifnei Chashuchim, you shouldn't be on the list of nudniks. But still, the Anshe Knesset Agdola were undeterred. Yotza Baskol v'Amar, another Baskol came, emanated from heaven, and said, Hame'amich Hame'imcha Yishalmena Ki Ma'asta Ki Ato Sivcha V'lo Ani U'mayadai Tedaber. Right? That who gives you the choice? Who gives you the right to make this decision? What do you think you know better than me, better than Hashem? And therefore, what are you doing? And at that point, they caved and they excluded Shlomo from the list. I gotta run. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.